Welcome to another episode of Pound for Pound Boxing Report. I am your host, Michael. This is episode 288. You're listening to the Pound for Pound Boxing Report, joined by my co-host, Gail from Communities Digital News, Daniel from The Inscriber. What's going on, lady and gent?
We're back. We're back. Boxing's back. We're back.
Yep, and right on the precipice. In, action inside the ring is returning and returning very soon. So, yay for all boxing fans. For those who are new to Pound for Pound Boxing Report, Pound for Pound Boxing Report, live YouTube show and podcast as well as blog, discussing all things boxing. The motto is, when boxing is good, we'll talk about it. When it's bad, we will talk about it. The bottom line is, if it concerns the sweet science, we will talk about it. If you want to find out all information about the Pound for Pound Box Report, if you're checking us out live on YouTube, just check the description below in terms of all the information, where to find us all over social media and whatnot, where you can donate if you have the spare change. I know that's tough right now given our economic times. You can also check out, for the time being, the blog page, p4pboxingreport.wordpress.com, where you can also find where to find us on all RSS feeds that carry podcasts, your iTunes, your Spotify, your Google Play Music, and whatnot. Where you can follow us on social media. We got a Facebook page, Twitter page, also where you can donate, and the link to my online coaching page. I am an online coach with Beachbody. Because of our current plight nationwide in the U.S., Beachbody is offering up a lot of stuff, a lot of free stuff, free workouts and whatnot. 2-week trial is running concurrent through the year, so I suggest you may try to hit up on that. So if you're interested, please check out my online coaching page over on Pound for Pound Box Report blog page. Let's get things started. Last episode, we talked about boxing, how it's handling COVID-19, right smack dab in the middle of the sport being put on forced hiatus. Well, the sport is soon to return. Bob Arum is putting up a card tomorrow night. Going to put another card Thursday the 16th. We'll talk about that shortly. But he's announced what he's going to do in terms of top ranks comeback. Eddie Hearn has described what he's planning to do as well. You can check out that on Three Kings Boxing. I am a senior writer for Three Kings Boxing. .com. Just go to threekingsboxing.com and just do a search of Eddie Hearn. You'll find my personal write-up in terms of his plans to bring the sport back. I'll go to you, Gail and Daniel. I'm starting the conversation with you, Gail. Your reaction to how boxing has further adapted itself in terms of what they will do moving forward as we're in the midst of this ongoing pandemic, and the adjustments not only promoters and promoters and networks has to make, but it's also state athletic commissions as well.
You know, it's been a delicate dance behind the scenes because the promoters are subject to the various state commissions. The state commissions are subject to their state's governor. And some of the states where boxing is most popular, most lucrative, draws the biggest crowd, the various hotspots for boxing are also the hotspots for the coronavirus. So it's been challenging. New York, New Jersey, Nevada, California. So we had a great milestone today with New York City opening back up, but everybody knew that reality for having boxing back on the East Coast was going to be off in the distance. So where else do you go? Is it going to be possible to do it in Florida, which is what the talk was for quite some time, and that's the route Dana White and UFC decided to go. But instead, all of the promoters have kind of held their powder, and it seemed fairly obvious early on that it would be Top Rank who would come straight out of the gate for a couple of reasons. Number one, they're based in Las Vegas. They've got a studio facility, but they also have a lot of partners there who are very eager to help them out. In particular, the MGM Grand or the MGM Resorts Company. So they had plenty of options and plenty of support. And really good relationships with the Nevada State Athletic Commission, who really held the cards here because they had to sign off on their plan to return to boxing safely, but only once their governor freed up the potential for returning to events safely and how that was going to work. So thankfully, a week and a half ago, Nevada State Athletic Commission held its regular May meeting. Top Rank had clearly given them their plan way before the meeting, signed off to get back on a limited basis. And if you've heard any interviews with Bob Arum about how this was all put together, he has said, for anybody who thinks it seems easy, it was not easy, that Brad Jacobs, who's the COO, the money guy of Top Rank as a business, and Todd DeBuff, the president, have been working for months to figure out, all right, what's the protocol? How does the testing work? Where do we put the fighters? How do we work with the medical staff? And their issue is there's no template. Nobody's ever done this before. They've had to make it all up, figure it all out. So tomorrow night is the very first test of this protocol that nobody's had any experience with. And they keep warning, it's a work in progress. It's a work in progress. And by the way, it's a work in progress. And it's not cheap. On a conference call with media, which is the only thing media could do leading up to the fight, was get on a conference call with everybody. The testing for each of the events alone, just the cost for the testing per card on a 6-fight card is $25,000. Not peanuts, doable. You don't really pass go without it. And it proved its worth when, to everyone's absolute shock, Mikeala Mayer, who was slated to be in the co-main, tested positive. So there's a lot of asymptomatic people out there, and you wouldn't think in a million years, an athlete who's really in tune with their physical self wouldn't have a clue that they were positive, but she didn't.
Excuse me for interrupting, Gail. Excuse me for interrupting, but I'm not surprised by that news. For those who do not know, Mikeala Mayer, undefeated women's junior lightweight, tested positive for COVID-19. She announced it yesterday. The reason I'm not surprised is because in other sports, most notably college football, you've seen same cases here. I think in the University of Alabama, you've had a handful of players. Well, let me take that back. College football, their universities are opening up and they're allowing their teams to come back for basically summer camp, if you will. And the process is that when they come back, it's going to be round testing for each player and all that for a period of 2 weeks, maybe, before they can get back training and whatnot. And we've already seen in a handful of universities, Alabama, Oklahoma State, a few others, individual athletes have tested positive for COVID-19, but they've been asymptomatic. You made note of it here in boxing with Mikeala Mayer. My fear is you're going to have more cases of this. That's why during the last show, I was questioning Dana White so hard and whether boxing is, when they follow suit with him, maybe it may not be the most wisest move. Because of the situation with Mikeala Mayer, because of the situation we're seeing in other sports. I fear that she's not going to be the only one.
Oh, no doubt. And when I say shocking, I don't think any of us are shocked. Asymptomatic spread, for anybody paying attention to the science, is real and probably the bigger threat than anything out there connected to this pandemic. But there's still a load of people who think, well, if you've got this, you're going to look and feel sick. No, a lot of people don't. A lot of people do get very ill. And you would think somebody in that good a condition, you would notice. They don't. She's a prime case. She's a absolute textbook example of somebody who's in phenomenal physical condition. Believe me, no one would ever accuse Mikeala Mayer of not working hard in the gym. She's a beast. And here she was thinking this fight was on until over the weekend. So she's out. They've not replaced an opponent. So that fight's just simply off the card with the other fights. Just stepping up and filling in. The good news is the plan as they designed it, as Top Rank designed their protocol, it did work. It caught this. It caught this before it got any farther. So if she's the only one, if she was the only one, well done. And Dana White had a similar situation with a single athlete testing positive and getting bumped out, and the rest of the card proceeding. And as far as we know, that one, his first one was a few weeks ago. To no ill effects, at least not directly related. So they set up in the MGM Grand Garden Hotel's main conference center ballroom. They're not in the arena. The conference room has been used for fights before. Not often. It's only had 3 cards ever in its history. The last one was a Friday night card prior to the first Canelo Golovkin fight. And the main event was Ryan Garcia, who had a 30-second first round knockout. PBC has used it. Right, actually, it might have been even pre-PBC. And then there was a third fight, and I'm trying to recall who was on that card. It's your typical large, public facility type ballroom. And if you have access to Top Rank's Twitter feed, there are quite a few photos showing you what it looks like. And they've gone real heavy on the lights, the neon. It looks like a Disneyland ride. It's bright. and it does disguise the fact that there are no audience seats. So other than Mikeala, we have got ourselves a card tomorrow night.
As Mike would say, indeed.
Indeed, yes. What do you think, Daniel?
Your thoughts? Go ahead.
Interesting to see. This is interesting to see, because it depended on the state. I knew Florida probably wasn't how shady everything went around when it came to Florida. And so you had to figure, okay, New York is not going to be an option for a little bit. New Jersey is certainly not going to be a new option. So realistically, Vegas was going to be the main option. And it makes sense. And that has to be done. You're going to get more positives out of this when it comes into testing, because that's unfortunately the nature of it. Like Mikeala is the prime example of an asymptomatic carrier of COVID-19. And it does going to come up that the question is, though, you have to catch it as soon as possible. And you hope that the person that gets, because we have to look at the cards that are starting to come up. It's not exactly, like I said, the big gate fights are coming. You wouldn't want to have a big gate fight in this environment. You're going to have mid-tier, big club level fights mode. And you have to make sure that you catch everything early on. Good thing, like I said, they caught it when Mikeala right as the fight was going to start. And it's going to be a slow process going into it, because You have to see how the testing is at the club level. You got to see how it's going to look. Because right now, as far as boxing with very limited crowd, the last one that we had here on American television was that Showbox card that only had the family members in Michigan. This is going to be a similar aesthetic, but everybody saw it with the UFC. It sounds different. Like you hear a lot more, the grunts, a lot more of the punches. How's that going to translate more in boxing where we already know the sound of the glove? It's like a universal sound when you hear it. It's going to produce more echo when there's no crowd. And what if, like our good friend Jacob did mention before the show, was the aspect of no real crowd pulling you one way. So that's going to be a little bit different thing to gauge when it comes to how boxing. Luckily, it looks like boxing, unlike MMA, has taken a little bit more of their time. I've built a little bit more. There are things that they didn't want to come up that have fallen through. Like Michelle Rosado's like Philadelphia card. Unfortunately, networks are looking for ways to cut costs. And unfortunately, like I said, that's one of the bad things of the network. You have to find a resource to do it. And luckily, with Top Rank and such, they have been able to find it.
Top Rank them for the time being. In the short term, they're going to do shows in Vegas. I mentioned what Eddie Hearn's doing. He's going to basically build a private facility, private compound, if you will, and he's going to stage fights there. Going to have a series of fights in the summer. I'll just say the summer. I don't want to get wrong in terms of specific date. Other promoters are doing similar things. I think in Mexico, they're going to have a private studio where they will stage bouts as well. I'm going back to you, Gail, because before the show you was mentioning specifically your home state of California and the plans that they have moving forward. Could you give some detail into that, please? Some insight.
Yes, so the California State Athletic Commission met last week, and they did pass at their last, or actually take that back a week. Let me see the timing of this. A week ago Friday, pardon me, they passed some what they considered emergency regulations that would allow combat sports to resume in the summer months, but it's got to be ratified by the California State Office of Administrative Laws. It's not 100% official. It's really similar protocol to the state of Nevada. Fighters would be tested 2 to 3 weeks before the event. If they're cleared, they go on the bout card. The commission will approve the fights. They get isolated and tested again upon arrival at their camp at a hotel or wherever they're going to be sequestered, along with anyone, according to the commission, that is deemed essential to the promotion and the California Commission approves them to be there. So there's a secondary level of approval that would apply to UFC, any boxing cards, club cards. Everyone working the corners will have to wear a mask and gloves. However, the one thing they didn't want to do is impose a specific limit on how many people could be in the facility, because they want to leave that to the promoter. In other words, if a promoter decides they've got a boatload of money and they're willing to spend it, and they want to test a larger group of people, and we're not talking about letting 10,000 fans in a building before anybody gets any crazy ideas. But for example, in Nevada, because of the number limit they were given, which I believe is 50, one of the things Top Rank decided to do was limit the number of cutmen So they're only using 2. The individual fighters are not bringing their own cutmen to the corner. The red corner is going to have the same guy all night. The blue corner is going to have their same guy all night. Two good guys that signed. Everybody had to agree. They're all fine with it. But, that means that, out of 5 bouts with 10 fighters, it means that potentially you have 8 less people to worry about, tests, and so forth. California is going to give the promoters a little more leeway. And if they want to test them all, say, bring all your cutmen, great. Likely the first fight in California will be over the 4th of July weekend. Golden Boy is talking under the radar, no commitment yet, of doing something at Fantasy Springs over the July 4th weekend. And that would make a lot of sense. It's fairly isolated. It's a one-stop shop. Fighters can stay there, fight there, remaining within the property. They're not hauling stuff all over the place. They're already set up. Probably also Thompson Boxing, who's been running club shows in smaller venues like the Omega Products Center in Corona, California, outside Temecula. I have a feeling they'll get started. And the big advantage there, it's outdoor. So it's, essentially the Omega Product Center is a setup in a big, big ass parking lot. So that's a pretty easy one to do, which then of course makes you think, well, if they're willing to do it there, can StubHub, Dignity Health Sports Park be very far behind? StubHub be very far behind. I think once you really do start in people, that's the place to go. That and maybe the Thompson Cards outdoors. I think, it's a matter not just of the logistics and the safety of, can you and how many people can you put in? Then you need to turn around and say to the fans, do you feel like coming? And I do think there will be fans that say, not too sure about that right now, because people aren't exactly pounding down the doors to eat in restaurants right now just yet. So this is the smart way to go. Do it without audiences. See how it works. And I am one of those people who says, truly, other than the very smart observation by our colleague, Jacob, about the judges and crowd noise, which we can get into in a little bit here in more detail, I don't think it's going to make any damn difference. Now, Shakur Stevenson was asked by the boxing media, what do you think about no crowd? Is it going to bother you? Have you thought about it? He said it didn't make any damn difference to him, because when he's in the ring, he focuses. He said the crowd means absolutely nothing to him. He doesn't even hear it. That's the right attitude. That's exactly the kind of fighter you want in there. And, all of these men and women have fought in front of no crowds in their early days, with rare exception. They know what it's like to be in an arena, and there's only your team and your mom and a couple of your friends, and that's it. And that's going to happen again. But good for them. And I will applaud, even though he can't hear it, Shakur Stevenson for being willing to step up, step out, get out in front. That is the smartest possible thing for a young guy on the rise, wanting to draw some new fans to his side to get out there, even if he has to sacrifice a few bucks. And we don't know if he is. I haven't seen the purse levels yet. But I'd like to see more young, ambitious fighters take that attitude and say, hey, right now, there's no other competition for the eyeballs. I mean, people are having to watch Korean baseball and cornhole throwing. So let me out there in front of the people. It's the smartest thing they could possibly do.
This may be a weird question, Daniel. Gail, within giving her thoughts, mentioned how fans may be a little bit wary of getting in the ring. Do you think that may apply to fighters as well, particularly fighters of means who can afford to maybe step out and could afford, not jumping back in the ring so quick, or do you think just the thirst for competition is just so much and just it's in the fighter's mind, temperament, and DNA to like whatever, just get me back in the ring. I want to fight.
It's a mix of both. It's really a mix of both because on one end, it is the thrill of the competition. The notion that you are testing yourself against the best. And not to mention that if there's fights to be made, there's training. And we all know that when it comes to money, especially the young guys, they don't make their money a lot of times, their money in sparring, as being sparring partners for other fighters. So the more fights happen, that's more opportunity to get that revenue when it comes to do it. At the same time, though, you have to see how to look at it. Like Jose Ramirez actually came out, I think today or yesterday, said he's willing to do it, a fight right now with no crowds, if he has. That pretty much shows when the notion of how fans factor into this, because we know Jose Ramirez from Fresno, that's insane. That crowd is crazy. You're suddenly like taking that part away. Probably the biggest factor that goes into is the fact that you have a routine. A lot of fighters have a routine. If they know their schedule, they know when they're going to fight, when they're going to do it. You have a routine throughout the year, what you're going to do. There's everything out of whack. And you're just looking for some level of normalcy.
Boxing hasn't only been gripped by this pandemic in and out of the ring. Within the past couple of weeks, boxing, as well as society at large, has been gripped by events that have taken place outside of the ring, outside of the sport. Um, Protest has sparked throughout the nation, particularly in reaction to, and I will say this, and whoever wants to come back at me and whatever, the senseless killing of Floyd George. This is on top of the, again, senseless killings of Breonna Taylor, the news about the tragic Ahmaud Arbery death, and the more details you read about that, uh, the more upset I personally get. Um, there have been out Black Lives Matter protests and other protests of its kind all over the country over the last 2 weeks. Um, the world has paid attention to it. You saw protests all over, in multiple protests in the UK over the weekend. You've had similar protests in Germany. I believe there was something in Australia, um, throughout Europe as well, all of Europe as well. And the boxing community has responded in kind. Uh, all the sanctioning bodies, I believe, posted something this week on Tuesday about it. Multiple fighters from Errol Spence to Andre Berto to Vladimir Klitschko. He put out a very passionate and message last week. And then there's the situation of one Anthony Joshua, and he's took part in a Black Lives Matters protest in his hometown in England Saturday. And I'll go to you on this one, Daniel. Uh, there's been a lot of backlash towards his way. Not only in the fact that he took part, but what he had to say. Um, your reaction to how boxing has responded to the civil unrest that's taken place in this country. And I would also add, personally, the subsequent complete lack of leadership uh, uh, from our government. Um, Boxers speaking out, Section 8 bodies speaking out, managers and promoters speaking out, um, as well as the backlash that Joshua has received um, for his participation over the weekend.
The backlash is a little bit surprising to me, just considering how well liked Joshua is. We have to come to grips with the fact that what we're seeing is something that happening. You didn't see this shift in the support to Black Lives Matter from
Okay, Daniel. I'm not able to hear. I think your mic is going in and out on me. Um, I'll go to Gail and pick up the conversation.
We sometimes need to remember that racial relationships in society, do vary from country to country. And, and also,
refusal
there we go.
Daniel,
participate.
Daniel, you're going in and out on me. You may have to reboot things. Um,
All right,
so I'm gonna continue the conversation on with Gail, and then I'm gonna go back to you.
And hopefully that'll get tidied up, because I'd like to hear from Daniel. But, we are watching how Joshua's being received in the UK. And it's a little bit different, not just because of the tone and temperature of the country itself, or the nations, but Joshua's status there is very different than any other boxer in the United States, save probably for Floyd Mayweather. And he's a global superstar. He's on billboards. He's got, he makes more money from endorsements, like many athletes here in the United States do, than they do from what they're actually earning a living doing. So, he's approached in a very different way. You contrast that, Michael, if you've seen Deontay Wilder's statement on his Instagram feed, and the video has made the rounds. To me, an incredibly powerful, passionate speech from the heart. The emotion pours out of every pore of his body, and not all that different than I've heard from him before. In fact, we had a very similar interview with him about respect before the Wilder Fury fight during the Los Angeles press appearance. And I am going to dig out that interview, as a matter of fact, because I know I've got it. But it had a very different tone to it, and something we've already heard Wilder speak about. Have you ever heard Joshua on a platform speaking about this? I haven't. So, that also, I think, plays a huge role. And on another topic, by the way, I think you need to revise your language a little bit, referring to these incidents. They should be called murders. Excuse me. They're not incidents. They're not killings. They're murders. I think that we should make ourselves very plain what has happened.
You're right.
So I encourage you to call what it is. Call it as we know it is.
You say surprise. I say it's not, because of what they're mad at him about. For those who do not know, segment of the UK are mad at him because some backdrop. At first, Joshua read a prepared speech that's from someone else, and then later on, he gave his own opinions. But the portion of what Joshua was reading that got folks need to do more investment in selves and buy buy from buy within their own neighborhood, buy from black stores and whatnot. And people were like, got mad at that. And well, what if some white person would have said, "What? Just buy only from white stores." Context is critical here. That's an apple and orange arguments. Is reactionary without thought. That's one. Two, the reason I'm not surprised at that is that when you hear black folks make the same argument here, you hear the same kind of pushback. That some are accusing Joshua of being racist, which he's not, in my opinion. You had some folks on Twitter and some prominent boxing folks on Twitter had the nerve to suggest that maybe the British board ought to investigate and look into what Joshua said to see if he was quote unquote racist or not. One, no. Two, you're going too far with it. That's why I'm not surprised. For me, as prominent as Joshua is, I may get in trouble for saying this. The people who are mad at him, just reinforcing that at the end of the day, as much as they like him for what he does, okay, how can I put this? The way that they reacted to him is similar to the way folks reacted to a Kevin Durant, a LeBron, and Kaepernick. The same way a certain person over at Fox News told them to basically shut up and dribble. We don't want to hear from you. That's what Joshua received over in the UK. And he basically responded in kind yesterday, basically telling folks, and I'm more surprised at the way Joshua responded to people who were criticizing him, made a post that basically told folks to fuck off. For you to think I'm ridiculous, I'm racist or whatnot, it's just ridiculous. I take back nothing of what I said. What I said has some validation, it has some truth to it, and I agree with that. But no, I'm not surprised, because whether it is a LeBron here in the States or a Joshua in the UK, and I'm learning more and more from that from my UK brothers and my UK folks, my UK boxing folks, my Great Britain boxing folks, similarities remain. Once you say something, a certain that is deemed controversial, a certain segment of the mainstream will get in a uproar, will get in all in their feelings, and they will do their damnedest to talk to you to try to put your black ass back in your place. That's what they doing to Joshua. What he said, and if you watch the rally, if you watch the protest, because he aired most of it live from his phone, some of the same things that was spoken there by Joshua and by people in that community, I hear the same thing here. Much of the backlash that Joshua has received, I hear the same thing here as a black person. So that's, in that aspect, that's not surprising at all. Doesn't care about his status. Once you perceive as being out of pocket, the backlash is the same. It's the exact same.
Michael, don't you think part of it, though, in that case, I mean, as elitist as we can be here in the United States, with, the disparity between people at the top of the money food chain and the people at the bottom of the money food chain, there's even more of a caste system, if you will, in places like Great Britain. And for better or worse, Anthony Joshua is a very rich man. Do you think that buy black message came off a little too elitist coming from him as the messenger?
No, 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 because he's a person who
Which, by the
cares.
way, I don't think it did. I don't think it did.
No, because he's a person who's shown that he has compassion. He's a person who's shown that he cares. Yes, he cares about everybody, but he also comes off, at least in what I heard, as a person who cares about his community. The fact that he has status, the fact that he's wealthy, the fact that he's in a certain class doesn't absolve him, if he's a person of conscience, doesn't absolve from what's going on in and around him. So no,
I
that
would
doesn't.
argue, in fact, he has a responsibility to use
Right,
the platform.
right.
I believe everyone who's got that platform has a responsibility to use it where necessary and appropriate. I mean, what else are you going to use it for? And I get it. You know, Charles Barkley and others are famous for saying, you know, we shouldn't be role models. Okay, I do agree. Not, you know, you don't necessarily want to hold out athletes as role models. However, athletes should make examples of themselves when called upon. And now is the time. Now is the time.
I think.
And
Let me get Daniel back in here. I think he's back in the stream. I want to hear your thoughts on this, Daniel.
All right, can you guys hear me?
you bet, I got it.
Okay, just making sure. Okay, because here's the thing when it comes into, like, at least the response when it comes to the Josh, I'm not surprised on two fronts. The first one being, and this, like I said, this is in a macro sense, we're like to really fully recover from, at least in the U.S., from the, you can say the precedent that Michael Jordan put in when he participated in the 1990 Senate race. Putting his economic portfolio ahead of what a lot of Americans in North Carolina were asking him to do at the time. But that did set a precedent for other top sports figures that they followed through, whether it's Tyler Starrett, Jeter in baseball, Jeff Gordon in NASCAR, like people that just don't want to get too much involved in social issues for fear of upsetting certain groups economically.
I don't buy that.
I don't. Starting with LeBron, but now you're seeing.
No offense, Daniel. No offense, Daniel, but I don't buy that.
No, that's part of it. You're starting to see the starting of it. No, I don't blame you too. I don't blame you too. Now, with Josh was a little bit surprising because he has crafted his image pretty well. Like I called him for a while a little bit that he does act a bit like a politician sometimes, and trying to say exactly the right things, trying to do the right things. And when you hear someone like Joshua say something like that, even though there was nothing wrong with it, and he had a quick response when people pushed back on it, it is a bit surprising, unfortunately. And I think what probably scares a lot of British people when it comes into it, at least in my time that I was in the UK, is they don't see that part of their racist history as bad as us here in the US. That's the surprising part, I think, to them. They have it in different areas, like when it comes to Indian citizens or Pakistani citizens in that area. But it's probably surprising there. We're talking about a country now that literally just threw a statue of a guy who was involved in the slave trade into the river over the week. So things are starting to change, and what Josh was doing, luckily enough, he's putting a premier face on this. I know you mentioned that Wilder had a statement, which he did on Instagram. Other fighters have come with a statement. You mentioned trainers, promoters, sanctioning bodies.
Yeah, Bella went
I remember
off.
when we talked about like who's the bigger face in boxing overall. Ludabella ethered almost everybody in this path. But he does that. Like I said, with Ludabella is consistent, luckily. But I know we had the discussion last year, like who was the biggest star overall, like Canelo or Joshua, because Canelo's the big star over here in North America, but worldwide, just based on what you see in advertisements and everything else, it's Joshua. It's the one that's been the global face of a lot. And now if he's the one speaking out, it does speak volumes to where we are in this movement. Because think about where we were 4 years ago, as far as when something like this happened, when an Eric Garner happened, a Michael Brown happened, Tamir Rice happened, or now recently like Steele, Breonna Taylor. When things like this happen, all of the companies that you see that normally are presenting statements, but they want to present those statements. The NFL, the ultimate league that did not want anything to do, actually came out with a statement. With Goodell actually being the one to broadcast it. That's where we are in the country when it comes into this. And in a way, boxers are actually one of some of the best examples to come out because of a lot of the backgrounds of these young kids, fighters. They come from where there's not a lot, sometimes there's not a lot of opportunity, or sometimes there's a lot more things happening in the neighborhood that they could get caught up in, or as they live in that area, they can get harassed by police a lot more. It's good to see people step up in areas and talk about those experiences. And like I said, we're seeing at a point where they said companies that you would never would have thought would have like put out a statement and say Black Lives Matter actually did it. So in a way, like I said, boxing this some of the ways leading the charge. A lot of faces are behind, but at least you're seeing a lot of things in the front, and people making statements, and people hopefully soon also put where their mouth is when it comes into a lot of this.
If these protests continue, and I fully anticipate that they will, and if you see more and more fighters step up and speak out, and even participate in protests themselves, how do you think they would change things in terms of the sport, in terms of viewership? Gail, Daniel, this question for both of you.
Michael, when you say change the viewership, you mean either attract viewers or drive away viewers?
Yes.
You know, I think in boxing, it's a non-issue. I really do. You know, frankly, I'm surprised why it's even an issue in the NFL. But, you know,
well, because in the NFL, let's face it, one, Goodell was wrong. I'm glad he finally admitted to it. Now, next thing he needs to do is apologize to Kaepernick specifically. When it comes to the NFL, it's not about the commissioner as much as it is about these owners. I'll just put it out there. A lot of these owners are old, recalcitrant, conservative white men who have a certain mindset. They love these players, particularly these black players, for what they can produce for them on the field and the money they can make for them. But they want them in their place. They don't want them to speak out against them so much. That's why, for instance, when the late Jerry Richardson of the Panthers, when they drafted Cam Newton back in 2011, the first thing they asked him, do you have any tattoos? That's why Jerry Jones basically came in back in 2016 and was like, oh, you players, y'all ain't gonna do nothing in response to this uproar when Kaepernick decided to kneel. Y'all ain't gonna do nothing. Y'all ain't gonna say nothing. And the players kowtow for the most part. A lot of these owners vote a certain way, side with a certain political party. are cool with a certain orange man in the White House.
Well, they want their tax breaks. They want their tax breaks. Let's face it. You know what though? I'm glad that
so that's why
yeah.
the situation is the dynamic, particularly the power dynamic of these owners.
Well, and
who they're tied to in their mindset, in their attitude. I haven't forgot what a lot of these owners said when Kaepernick knelt and began to kneel in 2016. And I've noted that as much as Goodell has said things, and as much as the players have said things, most of these owners ain't said shit, and they ain't gonna say nothing.
No. And to the power dynamic point, here's the real point, which you're bringing out, and I thank you for calling it to my attention. There is also a difference in that NFL players, yes, they have a union. Yes, there are certain stars with more negotiating power, but the bottom line is they're employees. Boxers are not employees.
Right. The dynamic in boxing is a whole lot different from the fight, not the fighters, but from promoters and managers, with Heyman, with Aram, with managers on the managerial side, like DeBella, like with Golden Boy.
Because if you don't want to be under the top rank Bob Arum banner, you can take your contract agreements down the street and renegotiate with somebody else. If you don't want to play in the NFL, where do you go? Canada? That's not happening. So yeah, it's a it's a mindset. You know, you do act very differently as an employee than you do if you are an independent contractor. And being one, I'm very well aware of that. And you get to a point where you just don't put up with the same kind of shit and the same kind of disrespect as an independent contractor that you might eat as an employee because, they sign your paycheck. As an independent contractor, if you have a beef with just one particular client, you say, nice for you, move on, fire them, find another one. So the boxers have a lot more autonomy. And it is much more individual personality driven. So especially the big stars, they just have a bigger seat at the table. So I perceive that as giving them far more freedom to speak out, and there being far less of
that. A greater level of cultural competency than a lot of these, I'll just say it, these older white bread NFL promoters.
Beautifully said. Yes, cultural competency. People in the boxing world, if they're uncomfortable with diversity, you better get the hell out right now because
right.
you would be damned unhappy and uncomfortable. And that is part of, to me, one of the most wonderful things about boxing is that exposure to diversity, to culture, to fighters from all over the world, much less all of their various ethnic, racial, cultural backgrounds. It's that flavor that to a lot of us, we truly enjoy the stories of, how all of these guys and women got into boxing. It is not a sport for people who've had it easy. Everybody's got a story about their background. So it does draw a different type of fan who has very different expectations. Few of the mental and emotional, I'll call them limitations of some of those fans of some of those other sports. And, they can have them. Fine. I'm not interested here. So I just don't think it's the same dynamic at all. And I think it does present an opportunity because you've got athletes who just don't have those same kind of constraints. And I hope they speak their mind and use that platform. I welcome it.
Yeah, and continue to do it more.
And until Goodell and the entire NFL apologizes by name, loud and clear to Colin Kaepernick and all of the men who supported him, it doesn't mean shit to me.
Indeed, indeed. I'll go to you, Daniel. Wrap up this dialogue we're having right now.
As far as what it could bring to the sport, I agree with Gail. I agree. It's not really going to change much because of a lot of the, we can say, demographic, the average boxing fan. And that is not going to be surprising. What could be actually an opportunity comes to boxing fans, actually, amazingly, is what's happening in the UFC right now. You're seeing a lot of UFC fighters like Khabib, like Conor McGregor, like Jorge Masvidal, who are now asking for top dollar for their services, even though they're locked into a contract because they're technically independent contractors. And suddenly they can bring up boxing, particularly McGregor, because he made that boatload of money out that one fight with Floyd. Maybe you can bring eyes into it, like, oh, wait a minute, these guys are coming in this sport, they're making the money they want to do. Maybe I should watch more instead of UFC, instead of Bellator. But I don't think that's going to be that much into it. I think the dynamic is going to stay the same. If anything, you're probably going to see a more rabid fan base coming in from it, because more passion when it comes into a fighter. That when you see a fighter come in, it's one thing for them to be really skillful, to be really great, and when it comes inside the ring. But if you're able to like the person outside of the ring as well, that can bring in a lot, and you can bring in more casuals more than likely. Oh, Michael dropped off. Are you there,
Yeah,
Mike?
my
Your Wi-Fi
sorry.
thing
I'm
dropped
sorry,
you like you
folks,
did
but
me.
my Wi-Fi is acting up. Continue on what you were saying.
Same thing. No, I was about to say no. What I was saying is maybe this will help bring a couple of them casual fans in, because it's like I said, it's one thing to like somebody for their skills inside of the ring, but if you actually like the person outside of the ring as well, that's going to bring in a lot more fans and a lot more casuals that wouldn't pay attention to the sport otherwise unless it's a big name.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm having some technical issues on my end. My Wi-Fi is wanting to act up all of a sudden. You touched on the Mikeala Mayer. Let's talk about some fights that's happening this weekend. As I said at the beginning of the show, boxing is basically officially back now. Have some fights. This show is being recorded on Monday, June the 8th. Against Felix Caraballo. Jessie Magdaleno is fighting on the 11th, and part of Bob Arum's plan when it comes to returning to the sport, he's going for the next 4 weeks, I believe. He's going to have basically 2 fights a week: fight on Tuesday, fight on Thursday, featuring a variety of fighters from his top stable. Let's start with the Stevenson fight. I'll go back to you, Daniel. Going to be a non-title fight. A fight is going to be held at 130 pounds. Stevenson, WBO featherweight champion, against Caraballo. Correct. This is a little more than just a showcase bout, and a way to basically ease the sport, ease life back, fights back into.
I get the gist what you're saying, Mike. But yes, it is, because, like I said, didn't have the time to properly get to featherweight and be able to defend that belt. So it's a way to ease the fight into ease the fans back into the sport and ease it in with a young face that it's in a division space between featherweight and where there's going to be plenty of competition for him going into it. So it's perfect for him to be the one to go showcase. Even if it does look a little bit rusty against Caraballo, we can expect expected at this point because it's not like anybody's gone out and actually did real hardcore training over the past 3 months or been allowed to for the most part. So you could take these as into it. And like we mentioned it at a certain point, like Gail mentioned, we're even watching Korean baseball. We might be stuck actually watching Korean baseball for a while because it looks like MLB is dead set on suicide. But it's another discussion for another day. But yeah, Gail, like this is a perfect fight, Gail, I think, to start in with somebody as young and some in this.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was such a smart idea for Shakur to take this fight. And there's something in it for him that's worth watching. Yes, this is a bit of a showcase fight. Caraballo is a Puerto Rican fighter. There's almost no video on him. I believe he's 13-1. And so, the expectation is that Stevenson won't have any problem with him, that he's not a threat. And credit to Caraballo, who said, yeah, I get it. It's, not a title fight, but it doesn't matter to me. If I look good, this is good for me. I'll get more opportunity. And he's right. It could open doors depending on his performance. Or not. If Stevenson wastes him, we'll see. But Stevenson is really having trouble making 126 anymore. He's starting to grow out of 126. He's a big 126. So he wants to test himself without any risk at 130. This is absolutely a smart way to do it. And he said that, he's not too sure he's going to go back to 126. He's not sure it was worth it, the effort. He does say he would go back to 126 for Josh Warrington. That's probably about it. He says he's already imagined himself in the ring with Oscar Valdez, Gary Russell Jr., Leo Santa Cruz. You can tell where his head's at. If he has a great performance at 130, and make no mistake, lots of these guys have been training. Not 100% sure they've all been sparring, but you know what? That's like saying no one's gotten a haircut at a hair salon with them all closed down. Please. We know that some of that stuff's been going on. We know some sparring's been going on. Stevenson has been in the gym. And it's going to be a little bit of a snapshot fight for the fans to predict where is he going to go from here. And I predict it'll be to 130. I do. And there are great fights to be made for him at 130. So I'd like to see him. And he mentioned Jojo Diaz as well. I think that'd be a terrific fight. And he said he'd fight Jamel Herring if he had to, not his first choice. But he said, if I was asked to fight Jamel Herring, I'd fight Jamel Herring. And I guarantee you that Herring would say, hell yeah, bring him on. So he doesn't seem to say no to anybody. So that'll be the intrigue of watching this fight. And Michael, are you back with us?
I'm here. I'm just reading some comments in the chat here. Everybody, shout out to everybody who joined us in the chat. St. Brett Sports, Scott Brown, B Space, Unrivaled, Olaf. Scott Brown mentioned, we talked about you mentioned Gary Russell Jr. Scott Brown said that he would love to see a Gary Russell Jr. Shakur Stevenson fight as a co-main eventer to Fury Wilder 3, and in a matchup between Gary Russell Jr. and Shakur. He has actually Gary Russell winning. Thoughts on a potential fight between Russell and Shakur Stevenson? I know Gary Russell has mentioned that he would. I think it was Shakur who mentioned that he could see himself fighting Gary Russell Jr. We all know Gary Russell Jr. He fights once a year, but he's talking about fighting twice a year actually. And Russell Jr. and Shakur, it would be a fascinating matchup. So the thoughts on the possibility of that fight, one being made, two, thoughts on it on the undercard of Fury Wilder 3, that would be a good look.
I'm loving it, Scott. I absolutely love it. Yeah, the big question is, has Mr. Gary Russell already had his one fight for the year? Because he might be out of the picture. You might have already checked the 1-year box. But no, if he is seriously thinking about getting busier, great. Sign me up for that. I'm all for it. I do think Stevenson should move on. I just really can't see him waiting around for Josh Warrington. And that fight, it doesn't really chill and thrill me versus seeing that list of names available to him at 130. Russell, Valdez, Santa Cruz, Jojo Diaz, Herring. Yeah, bring that on. Get that started. There's a lot of business he can do. And Russell Jr. on that card. Yeah.
Your thoughts on the
right now.
Your thoughts on the possible fight between Russell Jr. and Shakur and Scott Brown's idea, if the fight would ever happen, put it on the undercard of Fury Wilder trilogy.
It would be a smart idea, and it would be a happy for me because Shakur is young enough and smart enough to not fall into some of the traps Gary Russell Jr. can fall into. However, and we know how hard Gary Russell Jr. can hit featherweight at times. Putting him in 130, and if he doesn't lose any of that hand speed, give me that fight. But I gotta have to pick Gary Russell on that one because it's mainly the experience. It's mainly what he's shown to be the power. It's not like, we have to admit, it's not like he's slacking off. I know we make jokes of him fighting once a year, but it's not like he's slacking off on the rest of himself. It maintains himself in very decent shape throughout. He doesn't pull things like what Saunders does and only use training camp to lose weight. So that would be a very interesting fight, and that could be a card that could really build into it. But I don't really want to wait till 2021 for that to happen.
Unrivaled Boxing says Gary Russell Jr. Shakur is a perfect fight of speed versus timing. It would be a great fight. You also mentioned Unrivaled Warrington versus Kanzu. Warrington IBF champion at 126 pounds versus Kanzu at 1 WBA champion. It is my understanding that fight is a done deal. It's going to happen. That's going to be Warrington's next fight, presumably this summer. It would be action-packed for sure, but it's my understanding, Unrivaled, that bout will happen next. That it's a done deal and that is basically signed, though it hasn't. I don't think it's been formally announced. I've been informed that the fight is basically done. So there you go.
Love that.
Let's move on to bouts on the 11th. Yeah, you're right, Unrivaled. Seeing here in the chat, they're trying to elevate Kanzu with the WBA. But yeah, Scott Brown, Shakur is ducking Conlon. I'm gonna leave that up to you guys. I strongly disagree, but your thought on Scott's thoughts there.
Oh, Top Rank isn't going to put those two guys together. They've got two big revenue streams there. They aren't going to do that. Not right now, anyway. Maybe off in the future. That's sheerly cutting off a cash cow to put those two together.
You can't do that right now.
Yeah, not going to happen. Someday.
Yeah. No. Yeah, those two. No. Yeah, those two should not face each other. No, should not face each other right now.
And I'll put up Unrivaled.
Much that you can build into it, and in that area, we also have to take into account the fact that we have to say Shakur has a little bit more experience than Colin when it comes into it, but Colin to me is a little bit better of a pure fighter, but that can always change with time. But I would not risk it right now. And Top Rank we know is very, very good when it comes to fighters. They don't really mess up a lot, if ever, when it comes to building fighters that are Olympic. They're not going to put them in unless they absolutely have. At that point, they're probably, both of them will likely be either lightweight or junior welterweight.
And I agree with Unrivaled. Yeah, Shakur has got the power to take Conlon out. I'm less impressed with Michael Conlon's skill
It's
level.
not just that. He's more developed at this point.
Yeah.
Conlon's too leaky defensively for the likes of Shakur, who's very defensively responsible and skilled. He would at this point he would pick Conlon apart. What I think will happen though, Scott Brown, he's not scared. He's not running. Shakur is not ducking him. No, but when Shakur eventually moves up to 130, I would guess in the next 12 to 18 months, look for Aram to put Conlon in a position where he would fight for Shakur's vacant title. That's what's going to happen. That's what's going to happen. So let's move on to some other one more bout before we start to shut things down here. And I'll go to you, Daniel. Jessie Magdaleno. He's fighting a guy by the name of Vicente. I admit I don't know much about Vicente. If you do, please give me some insight.
I've been trying to look myself. I haven't seen a lot, but that normally tells me this is a pick me up fight for Magdaleno. He probably does need one, and it's a good, pretty much in the showcase fight against more than likely a game, but probably easy victory in a way.
Your thoughts on this, Gail? To me, this looks like even more of a showcase than Shakur's bout because, excuse my ignorance, I don't know. I don't know really anything about his opponent.
Yeah. Vicente is considered a quote contender. He's rated 12th by the WBO, 15th by the IBF at 122. How does that? What does that really mean? His record is he's no newcomer. His record is 36-4-2, 28 knockouts. So that's a knockout percentage of about 2/3. So enough of a live dog to make it look interesting. Yeah, with that many losses and that much, wear on the tires, not going to be a major challenge to Magdaleno. This is not going to happen. So Magdaleno is another one of these guys, trying to spoil for a fight with somebody we just talked about, Gary Russell Jr. Now, Gary Russell is way too fast for Magdaleno, way too fast. But Magdaleno's young, so he's looking for experience. Vicente apparently is going to be the let him roll up some rounds, which right now is really important for a lot of these young guys, is because they have got to get in there and get to work. They just need to get to work. So Vicente will give him rounds. Unrivaled, I agree. He will give.
Yeah, shout out. Yeah, I was going to mention that.
Absolutely.
Shout out to Unrivaled.
He'll give him rounds. He'll earn a paycheck. He won't embarrass himself at all. He's got plenty of experience behind him. But yeah, he won't be a major threat. And it'll give the fans something to watch. The truth is right now, ESPN needs the programming. That's why they've given up 2 nights a week to Top Rank, because they're going to get to fill several hours. We're going to get to see, by the way, the entire card, start to finish, 5 fights now. And same every night on Tuesdays and Thursdays for virtually the rest of the month. Then they're going to see what they decide to do in July. They're still kind of to be announced as to Top Rank's July schedule. But by then, you're going to also start seeing a lot of other sports come back. In the next couple of times we have the show, one of the things we're going to need to discuss is, with all of the sports coming back at once, how is the deck going to shuffle for boxing? Right now, boxing gets to be center stage. Can it hold an important place? Because baseball may or may not come back. The NBA and the NHL is coming back at playoff level, and they'll be on and off pretty quickly. NFL is, their schedule's intact, but come on, folks, that is still a big question mark. It really is. Boxing needs to seize the moment. We've got an opportunity to rebuild a little bit of a fan base that's eroded so much over the years.
Okay, excuse me for interrupting, Gail. We mentioned the issue of this ties into a topic we talked about earlier. I think you mentioned before the show. We talked about before the show that for the Stevenson fight, he will be without his trainer, Kay Karoma. I'm going to bring that here to the forefront here because we got some breaking news on that. And this is from a write-up on ESPN by Steve Kim. I'm going to try to read here word for word. Shakur Stevenson will be without trainer Kay Karoma on Tuesday when he fights Felix Caraballo in the main event of the top ranks boxing card in Las Vegas. Although he tested negative for the coronavirus on Saturday, Karoma has been in contact with Mikeala Mayer, another fighter who he trains and was planning to be in the corner of on Tuesday. Mayer announced her positive test result on Saturday, and as a result, according to the policy set by the Nevada State Athletic Commission, members of her team are ineligible to remain in the restricted top rank arena. Mayer's fight against Helen Joseph has been removed. So, in short, because Karoma has been in contact with Mikeala Mayer, who tested positive for coronavirus, they're basically holding him out of Shakur Stevenson's corner. So that's an update on that. Any quick word before we move on?
No, that's we had heard almost only at the rumor unconfirmed stage before the show that Karoma was out. Good to get that word before the show is complete tonight. So they were going to be permitted 2 cornermen. I assume somebody else is there ready to go. You know, the truth is, other than handling any cuts or any issues, you know, sometimes the trainer is of minimal input, to be very honest.
And just reading down
He'll be fine.
reading down right quick. Top Rank COO Brad Jacobs told ESPN that Edward Jackson will replace Karoma in Stevenson's corner. Stevenson would also have Willie Moses, his grandfather, in his corner as usual.
Yeah, I'm not too concerned about him.
And shout out to Unrivaled for the knowledge in terms of Vincenze. He says that Vincenze, he gave some info. Vincenze is a tough guy who gives rounds. Saw him get comfortably beat on the Ramirez versus Hooker undercard. Fought Tremaine Williams, a come forward fighter with a high guard with no real ambitions for. So thanks for the info on that. One more topic, kind of bit of fun here, depending on your perspective. The back and forth, and I'll start with you on this one, Daniel. The back and forth between WBA quote-unquote regular world champion, Tank Davis and Ryan Garcia. One thing that you can be entertained by during this hiatus due to COVID, and that is Tank and Ryan Garcia going back and forth at each other on social media. It's been nonstop. It's continued today. What did you think about all this? And isn't it high time that Golden Boy and Mayweather just say forget it and just put these two in the ring? Because on a personal, while it may be fun and entertaining, particularly the video that Ryan Garcia put up, kind of suggesting that Tank Davis has been getting fat during this time off. And as funny as that was, it's getting to the point where these two are being a little bit petty here. Settle your matters in the ring.
Oh man, Ryan Garcia's Twitter thing is busy. We had to make sure it's because that's not only Tank Davis. He's gonna have Demar's recently too. Although Mars laughs at
Called him a little boy.
He's like, that's a little kid playing.
Call him a little boy. That's rude.
Yeah. Is he wrong? Comparing Abner Morris to Ryan Garcia as far as age, He ain't wrong. You ain't had to. They say you ain't had to say it, but you ain't wrong. But the thing with him and Tank, that it is entertaining because, yeah, Tank does stupid. I don't know. There's a lot of video evidence of Tank doing stupid things, and Ryan does focus a lot on getting those Instagrams. So it is a reasonable way to do it because, okay, you have beat who got his first title of a very good champion when he got the 130-pound title, and he does have power, but in that area it will be interesting to see what Ryan's hand speed will look like, especially now, like I said, that he's getting more acclimated in the Reynoso camp. So yeah, this would be the perfect fight for Oscar and Floyd, just to finally say, you know what, okay, we're both retired. We're both not gonna step in again. Makes a lot more sense to break bread together than to break smaller bread apart. It just makes more sense. Makes to the world.
Quickly, your thoughts on that, Gail. And as an aside, kind of indirectly connected to Tank. Well, it really isn't, but I'm gonna throw it in here anyway. What do you think that as all this is going on between Tank Davis and Ryan Garcia, you got Floyd Mayweather doing work in the gym with Devin Haney?
Well, it's easy for them all to talk smack to each other right now because none of them's getting in the ring anytime soon. I mean, that's like two guys screaming at each other while their friends are holding them back, and neither of them's going to move an inch. So they can say whatever damn thing they want to. There is not going to be a fight. It's meaningless. It's people need to divorce whatever happens on social media, which is all let's pretend kind of stuff, and what happens in the real world. They're just increasingly separate. In fact, I would say they're totally separate. Wherever social media reflects reality or what becomes reality is a complete accident.
And thoughts while all this is happening, you got his Tank's promoter Floyd openly working the pads and training tips to one Devin Haney, and I say that because Tank has also been talking smack about Haney, and vice versa.
Well, again, what else does Floyd have to do right now? Everything's closed. He can work in the gym. Haney's always, we know Floyd has had a very contentious relationship with Tank. I think he appreciates Tank's talent, but Floyd's the boss. Floyd is the senior member of the firm over there. And I'm not sure that Gervonta has always showed the proper respect and deference to somebody who's older, far more accomplished than he is. There needs to be a certain amount of respect shown, and I'm not quite sure it's always been there. And I don't care who you are, when some little whippersnapper, wants to tell you your business in whatever your professional field is, you don't always take that too well. So I'm not surprised that Floyd would prefer to spend his time with Devin Haney, who I imagine shows quite a bit of deference and respect to Floyd and is probably much more willing to shut up, listen, and learn from Floyd.
And I think we're going to I'll get your thoughts on this quickly. Your thoughts on this, Daniel. While all this is going on, you got Floyd, who was Tank's promoter, in the cut, working with Haney, given the backdrop that both Haney and Tank have been also been popping off at the mouth towards each other.
All I gotta say is that this is just another chapter in the continuation of Tank Davis likely becoming Adrian Broner 2.0, and I'll leave it at that.
Oh dear. You mean the Bronos who's out here talking about he's going to be a rapper now?
Well, thank God if that means he's leaving boxing. Go for it, baby. I'm all for it. Can I assist you on the way out of town? Thank you. And
Continue on, Daniel.
Yeah.
Well, if that route pointing out AB's rap career, well, Rick Ross has been getting slim, so he might fill out that space of a big guy with a beard yelling "boss" every single time.
By the way, I hope that most of you listening caught Showtime's replay this week included, first of all, Joshua and Klitschko, which was real fun to see again. And also the Maidana beatdown of Broner, which I imagine was probably boxing the happiest day ever. It was the night that Maidana beat Broner. And, he was, an underdog in that fight. Broner was absolutely the favorite. Now in retrospect, it doesn't seem so obvious, but that was, seriously an upset. Yeah, I do think that might have been boxing Twitter's happiest night ever to this day.
To quote Deontay Wilder.
Oh my God!
I think at that point we better.
Oh my God! That fight
around.
Yeah. Well, I'll put it this way. I remember hearing the British broadcast of that fight, and the British were hyping up Broner like that. He's like, he's the next megastar, the next Floyd Mayweather, and then just watching them eat their words, and each was just beautiful.
Indeed, I think we're going to start to shut down the show on that note. I want to thank everybody who joined us in the live YouTube chat. The questions and their comments. Saint Britt, Scott Brown, Unrivaled. Who else joined us? B Space, Radian, GB Boxing. I'm missing someone. Olaf. I can't forget about Olaf. So I want to thank all of them, their comments as well as their questions throughout the show. Going to go around the panel. I want to thank Jacob, who joined us pre-show, gave us an update on what he's doing. Shout out to Gus. Shout out to Bo, as well as the rest of my brethren over at Three King Boxing. If you want to check out their stuff, just go to threekingboxing.com. I'm going to go around the panel here. Begin the show starting with ladies first. Going to end the show with ladies first. Gail from Communities Digital News, for folks who want to talk the sweet science. For those who want to talk media, because you do teach media in your spare time. Let the folks know where they can find you.
Oh, hell, I get paid for that. Fair time, man. You can find my column on Communities Digital News. Yes, it's still alive, and we're bringing it back to life at comdiginews.com. That's COMMDIGI news.com. And I hope you gentlemen, who I see in the chat, all appreciate that my avatar is the top-ranked knockouts who will be working the fight tomorrow night, sporting their masks. Yes, they will be in the ring in their usual uniform, booty shorts, and their masks.
Absolutely. I'm going to go to Daniel from the Inscriber, for those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk the NBA, which is, I believe, is set to return in July, late July. For those who want to talk that NBA, particularly when it comes to the Miami Heat, let the folks know where they can find you.
You can find me on Twitter at Rock. Yeah, we're definitely gonna watch this card and definitely reach out to me, because we're gonna lose a lot of things, unfortunately, we'll lose our boredom in the fights. But if you're a baseball fan, sorry.
If you want to follow, if you want to talk boxing with me, you know what it. If you want to talk boxing with me, you know what it is on Twitter, Brother JR at Brother JR76. As I said at the beginning of the show, if you want to find out all things about all information regarding Pound for Pound Box Report, if you're watching this on YouTube, just hit the description box below. Just check the description below for all the info. If you're not, please check out the blog page, p4pboxingreport.wordpress.com. Check the top right of the blog page. You will find links to where to find us all over. Follow us all over social media. Where to find us on all RSS feeds that carry podcasts. Your Spotify, your iTunes, your Google Play Musics, and all that other stuff. Links to where you can donate. Links to my online coaching page. For those who are watching us on YouTube, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. And make sure to comment. I usually will respond. May not be the same night, but I usually will respond. Unless it's just something stupid where I'm just sorry. I just have to remove the comment. Don't take no offense, but I just don't like stupid stuff. But yeah, also leave a review on iTunes. Leave a review on Spotify. Particularly iTunes, if it's a 5-star review, I'll make sure to read it on the show. On the next episode, we will do a recap of Shakur Stevenson's fight. We will do a recap of the Magdaleno fight, and we will do some previews of some more fights that's going to be happening via Top Rank. As is going to be fights on, excuse me, right quick. Joshua Greer fighting Mike Plania on the 16th. I think that's a low-key good fight. That's just my opinion. Giovanni Santillon is fighting on that undercard. On the 18th, Jose Pedraza. He's fighting on the 20th in Mexico City. Emmanuel Navarrete, current WBO junior featherweight champion. He's going to be fighting in a non-title bout on the undercard of that.
Because
have former
not sit still.
right. And on the undercard of that, you're going to have Luis Neri fighting on that. So that's actually a pretty decent card. The fights may not be that great, but be worth it to watch Navarrete and be worth it to watch Neri, who's still very, very good. At now 122 pounds, he's officially a junior featherweight now. So we'll preview all of those fights. So yeah, sorry for the technical problems, particularly on my end. Again, I want to thank everybody who joined us in the live show on YouTube, the chat. Thank Jacob for joining us and giving an update on how he's doing before we begin the show. Again, shout out to Gus, shout out to Bo, shout out to the folks over at Three Kings, for Gail from Communities Digital News, for Daniel of the Inscriber. I am your host, Michael. This has been episode 288 of Pound for Pound Box Report. We will see you hopefully next week. Everyone have a good evening. Good night.